It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. You know, this story comes out about 10 days after I saw a story. Did you see that story that said that everybody isn't moving, from, for example, Washington State, Oregon, and California? They're not moving, as far as Texas and Florida. A lot of people are saying, let's just go to Idaho.
Yeah, right.
So this sort of fits in. A 13th county in Oregon. Has this ever happened? Have you ever had 13 counties in any state? That many counties all vote to secede from their state. I mean, it might have happened. I don't know. It could have happened around the Civil War or whatever. I don't know. But outside of that, has there ever been a scenario like that?
I can't remember in modern years.
Yep.
And it just makes you wonder what's next. Those 13 counties could invade Idaho and just take over part of the state.
A 13th county in Oregon passed a measure that would allow the county to move forward with efforts to secede from the state and join the Republican-governed state of Idaho. Voters in Crooks County passed Measure 786, also known as the Greater Idaho Measure, 53 to 47% on Tuesday.
Is there a lesser Idaho?
Greater Idaho Executive Director Matt McNamara issued a statement that there was no excuse left for the Oregon legislature or the governor to continue to ignore the people's wishes.
Well,
the voters of Eastern Oregon have spoken loudly and clearly about their desire to see border talks move forward. He said in a statement, with this latest result in Crook County, there's no excuse left for the legislature and the governor to continue to ignore the people's wishes. We call on the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President to sit down with us and discuss the next steps towards changing governance for Eastern Oregonians, as well as for the legislature to begin holding hearings on what a potential border change would look like. Wow. 13 different counties. If successful, the Oregon border would be shifted 209 miles to the west from where it currently is. Beautiful part of Oregon, by the way. Just beautiful. I mean,
you mean the Greater Idaho part?
the
Is that what you mean?
Eastern Oregon. I mean, it's parts of it look like another planet, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Mm-hmm.
So the Greater Idaho movement. Now, if they became part of Idaho, would the rest of Idaho be less than greater?
Yeah, the lesser Idaho.
The lesser Idaho.
Yeah, it's lesser.
Okay.
It would be.
I don't
lesser
think.
Idaho.
I don't think the citizens of Idaho would go for that.
Well, I don't think they should accept Greater Idaho. That's the whole point. Wait a minute. You guys get to be Greater Idaho, and we're just Idaho? No.
Now, in addition to the 13 counties who have passed the Greater Idaho measure, in 2023, the Idaho House passed a memorial inviting the Oregon legislature to begin border talks. In order to have because this is the next thing. How does this happen? I mean, are they spitting into the wind? In order to have the border of Oregon moved, both states would have to need to approve it, and the United States Congress would also need to approve and weigh in. That's never going to happen.
No, this isn't going to happen, no.
Because the last thing Democrats want are people not just moving out of liberal states, but parts of the state, rural areas, wanting to, because if that's successful, tell me what liberal state that won't happen in. You go to New York, you go to New York State, people think, I'm from, grew up in Buffalo, but in many of the rural areas of New York, they're more conservative than the liberal areas of Texas. Rural areas in liberal states can be extremely conservative. That's the first thing I noted when I went to Oregon, because people initially would think of Oregon and go, just a bunch of whacked out liberals. No. Maybe in the urban areas, but you get outside of it, that's not the case. And the same for New York. So if there's no way the Democrats in Congress, they're already panicking, as we know. Look, Gavin Newsom, who in normal times, they would have gotten rid of Biden so quickly and Newsom would have been in. They've seen the polls. People don't wish to be California. And people are moving from those states. And we see the migration to the more red states where they can get out. The last thing the Democrats would ever allow is for 13 counties to secede and become part of a Republican state.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. This is why I think those 13 counties need to invade Idaho. Take it.
Well, I mean, it's not going to
take it now.
It's not going to be much of an invasion. Like, come on over, but
well, here's the thing: because they don't, this is something that I've long considered. When you think of states like Oregon, California is beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. And you think, if you grew up in California, and I have friends that did, and they live, a couple of them actually live in the Bay Area still, and they're conservative. It's the only two in the Bay Area that are conservative. And it's got to be just so frustrating, because you don't want to leave your beautiful state behind, right? But at some point you're thinking, again, I can't afford to stay. You'll look at Oregon, and it's like, yeah, well, we're not leaving our state. We're taking part of it with us. No. We're not going anywhere.
Wait a minute.
Move the line.
Right. We're not leaving.
Yeah, no, that's
we're just leaving you guys.
I like this idea.
Right. We're taking our land with us.
Now, I want to talk to our friends in Kern County, California. This wall that you would need. Just hear me out. Hear me out. I think it'll work. It's going to cost some money, but man, it's going to be great in the end. And that's, because that's what I think of. We talked about kind of, if you're anchored there with a family and everything else, because I'm anchored in Texas. Man, if Texas was a horrible state, well, I guess my parents probably wouldn't have stayed. But I'm not going anywhere. My kids, grandparents, my kids and grandkids, and my parents are here. My in-laws are here, and I don't want to go anywhere because I love my state and it's a great state. But others are looking at their state, going, I just the policies I can't deal with. But now you think about also the where you live. That's also part of your culture. I can't imagine living anywhere else. When I drive around Texas, and in Texas, we have all different kinds of scenery. You can go up into the Panhandle in the winter and see it's not the kind of snow they get in the mountains.
It's cold.
But it's the
winter.
wind.
It's winter.
The wind is it just blows right through you.
Yeah.
For some reason, Dalhart seems like it's 50 degrees colder than anywhere else in the state. I know that's not true, but it just seems like it. And then you've got everything, all the way down to the ocean, and you've got the beautiful green part of East Texas.
East Texas.
It's
Hill country.
Oh, the hill country will
as you get
take
down
your
to
breath
central
away.
Texas, yeah.
You get down to the New Braunfels area and the Guadalupe River, and then for me, growing up in San Antonio and Del Rio, and that white caliche rock and the way that it reflects off of the sun, and I mean. And so you think about,
and don't forget, as you head southwest, the beautiful mountain ranges out there and everything else that you can get. Some of the formations are just spectacular.
Oh yeah, you go out, toward El Paso, but when you start going out to the Panhandle north of Amarillo, and if you're heading toward the mountains actually of New Mexico or Colorado, and the scenery starts to change. It's just beautiful, and I think of the people that live in these other states, and all of the beautiful landscapes and things to do, and I think to myself, I can't imagine. I'm so grateful that I don't live in a situation like that, and this is why I appreciate the approach here. I mean, it's not going to happen. But I appreciate that approach. Is like, we're not going anywhere. You guys move the line, just move the border.
But it's hard. It's hard for people to move. I look at my family, and my immediate family. They're all conservative. Mm-hmm. My entire immediate family. Everybody. Everybody is. Maybe not. Some of the cousins or whatever, but my immediate family all is, and a lot of it's their home. Mm-hmm. They don't want to leave.
Right.
And, until and I had left so many times because I was in radio. I left, came back, left, came back, left, came back again, then left. But I've been back and forth. And so for me, traveling and living in different places was a part of what I did.
Right.
So people ask me now, well, when you retire, it's like, well, that's a big question.
Right.
When I retire, will you go back? And I went, no.
Right.
No, I'm keeping the house. I'll visit.
Right.
I'll visit. And I'll stay longer. Mm-hmm. But no, I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't wish to live. I don't wish to live anywhere else. Now, I might, you never know, might move to another southern state, but I like the heat better than the cold. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to get involved in the taxes and just everything else up there.
Right.
I want to live. I feel much better living here. But you live in Eastern Oregon. People don't understand the difference in the culture between there and, for example, in the middle of the University of Oregon campus.
Right.
Or in Portland. I mean, it is just a world of difference. And these aren't people, they're not people that, if they have to, they'll get up and leave. But that's the last thing they want to do.
Yeah.
They want to stay where they are, and they want things to change, and they can't get things to change. So they want to take their property, and go somewhere else. Now, the number one reason, I want to make sure I get this in, it won't happen is because Oregon would lose congressional seats and Idaho would gain more.
Right. Yeah.
So Oregon would lose power, and they don't wish to lose that power of that many seats. So that's the number one reason that it won't happen, is they would lose congressional seats.
Right.
And a tax base too, but it almost is an admission of failure.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And Congress, Democrats in Congress would never allow that to happen.
Just not
because
gonna happen.
then you would see, we talk about states seceding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's easier for counties to do it. And if they were able to do it in Oregon, then there would be a national movement in these states to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Harris County would say, well, look, we wish to become a part. Harris County here, Austin, Texas.
Harris is Houston.
Oh.
Travis County.
Travis County. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, sorry, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, both.
It might be both, actually.
Harris County, sorry. Travis County.
Mm-hmm.
I should know Travis Lake. I mean, friends have a cottage up there
Mm-hmm.
or down there. But we want to go to California. Well, the thing is, you're not border adjacent, which would be
right.
which would be tough. But who knows what would happen at that point? But I see the big movement. The big movement would be rural areas in liberal states.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I can look at Illinois. The same thing. You get out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You go to these rural areas. They're so conservative. It's unbelievable. You're like, you're more conservative than people I know in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They're all Democrats, most of them that would be, more liberal, but that's why it won't happen.
Yeah,
but
logistically, it would be the Democrats giving up a lot, and they're not going to do that.
But just think about 13 counties.
Yeah.
All want to go. That's a difference not only in the political culture, but in the culture.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howe's Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
What's the expectation weather-wise as travelers prepare for the first summer holiday weekend of the season?
There's a lot of disorganized disturbances that are going to be working their way across the country, starting in the northwest, eventually ending up in the middle part of the country before exiting through the Great Lakes region. And with a pretty steady parade of systems moving through during the holiday weekend, unfortunately, you're going to have to be prepared for showers and thunderstorms across the majority of the country.
With some areas of active weather expected, according to USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey. He adds there are 2 areas of dryness expected during the 4-day holiday period.
Coastal Texas, eastward across the deep south to the southern Atlantic coast. That is one area that will be hot and mostly dry. The other area where we expect to see dry conditions through Memorial Day weekend will be the southwestern quadrant of the country, all the way from California to the southern high plains.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, some analysis on where the Trump trial is going. We'll hear from Jonathan Turley interview yesterday on that. And a very well-known Democrat wrote this piece that I want to make sure we read before we get out of here today,
right.
at least parts of it. Democrats' fight against hate crimes vanishes in the face of anti-Semitism.
Wow.
Written by a well-known Democrat. And it's something that we've said all along, though. And we'll see whether, when we read it, we'll see whether he relates to what we have related. Well, wait a minute. It's always been a problem if you've recognized identity politics is the racism that the Democrats have been promoting for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And so we'll get to that coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. All right, the Trump trial will continue next Tuesday with closing arguments, and then the jury instructions next Wednesday is what the timetable is, unless the judge comes in and gives the directed verdict and says not enough evidence. And he, again, is at least taking it under consideration because he when he came back, after they had the court session, when was it? Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. He was still considering it.
Right.
And he said he would consider it over the long weekend. I want to go, this is Fox News yesterday. They're having a panel discussion, and Jonathan Turley was a part of it. I just want to play part of this in case people haven't kept up to date on it. Jonathan Turley, constitutional law professor, a Democrat, not a Trump supporter, but is on Fox News a lot. Doesn't seem to be on the other networks much, though.
Yeah, right.
You know, is he a Fox News contributor now? I don't know if he is.
He might be, one? And if that's the case, then that would explain
that would be it. Okay. I don't know if MSNBC wants him, though.
Yeah, well, right.
But here's just part of the discussion that went on yesterday. Okay, here we go.
I had a little bit of jealousy. You know, you guys were down there in the middle of the action. I'm going to point out a story. This is from Alan Dershowitz, a story that I think has been largely overlooked. Okay, let me set it up for you. The judge had a problem with Bob Costello. He wasn't happy with him. He was giving him the side eye or whatever the judge said. The judge cleared out the courtroom, or tried to. And the press reporter said, wait, this is a public place. It's all in the transcript. And Dershowitz is one of the reporters who stayed behind. This is what he wrote. I was inside the court when the judge closed the Trump trial, and what I saw shocked me. The judge in Trump's trial was an absolute tyrant, though he appeared to the jury to be a benevolent despot. He seemed automatically to be ruling against the defendant at every turn. You were there? Do you agree with that?
I certainly agree with the fact that the judge was overwhelmingly voting with the prosecutors. He is reserved questions that could make a big difference in terms of how the jury ultimately rules. And we're watching that very closely. We expect to get some answers by Thursday. But some of the decisions from the judge, I must tell you, I was mystified. And they did seem to be pretty biased. You know, for example, when Costello was testifying, the prosecutors asked about the meaning of a line, and he was expressing what the meaning meant, and the prosecutor cut him off and said, that's enough. And he said, well, can I further explain? And the prosecutor said no, and the judge said no. Well, when the defense stood up, they said, would you like to complete your answer, essentially? The prosecutors jumped up and said, it's beyond the scope. And a number of us were just looked at each other like, what? I mean, it is the exact scope. He's continuing his answer. It didn't make any sense at all. And I was looking at the judge thinking, did you not even hear the objection? Because that's the type of moment that I had often in that courtroom where I couldn't figure out how you could even sustain an objection. But we're now looking at the big ticket items. We're looking at things that if the judge grants what the prosecutors want, it could put a very heavy thumb on the scale. Essentially, the prosecutors are trying to reduce this playing field and put that jury right in the end zone so that they don't have to go very far for a conviction. And that includes lowering the standard on a critical term in the indictment so that they don't use the higher standard of a crime.
So,
you know, before we go any further on it, that's something that I think legally blew them away because the prosecution had the Costello there, who was the attorney for Cohen, and so they asked him a question. He started answering. They said, "Okay, that's enough."
Well, no, shut him down.
Then the defense came back and said, "Well, we want him to finish that answer."
Yeah,
and that would have been redirect at that point. We want him to finish his answer, and they said, "No, it goes beyond the scope." Well, we all know from Law and Order and Matlock, if one side opens the door to a topic with a witness,
then that is within the scope.
It becomes within the scope.
Yep.
What you're saying is you don't like the answer.
Right.
Nobody was saying that the answer deviated from the question at all.
Right.
It's just they didn't like the response, and so the defense immediately said, okay, we wish to redirect, and we want him to be able to finish what he was going to say. And the prosecution objects to a question that they asked, to an answer that they asked, and the judge said, sorry, defense. And that's what I think blew them away, going, my God, all this is, everything is, there's so much reversible error on this, including lowering the standard of a crime to a civil crime instead of a criminal crime, which completely, it's almost as if we don't care what the law is. Let the judge, we're just going to manipulate this to the point where we're going to tell the jury, this is a crime. It's been committed. I'm telling you it's a crime. And they come back and say, okay, he committed that crime. What was the crime? Well, this is what the judge told us. Well, that's not a crime.
Right. It is so bad. It really is so bad. I think Costello in the media before he testified, Costello being in the media, I think is part of the reason why the judge told the jury, don't Google anything, because Costello just destroyed it. And all of his answers, of course, everything that he told destroyed anything that Cohen was saying and destroyed the credibility. If you gave any credibility to Cohen in the first place, destroyed any of that.
Here's more of that panel discussion.
Eli Honig was on CNN last night. He's one of their legal analysts. Listen to him here, Lydia.
Prosecutors have to prove falsified records for another crime. Defense lawyers were begging him. They have to know what the other crime is. And prosecutors were saying, no, let's keep it very vague and general. It's a bizarro world. I know that there is some aggressive reading of the New York statute that says, well, the jury doesn't really have to know what the other crime is. But to me, that suggests that the DA's office is hell-bent on getting the conviction now and worry about the fallout later.
And
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just get the conviction. It doesn't matter whether it's based in law. It doesn't matter. Just convince the jury. Lie to the jury.
Yeah.
Tell the jury something that isn't true. Get the conviction, and whatever happens after doesn't matter, because all they want is to be able to say, this is Donald Trump, former president and convicted felon, and they can say that all the way up to the election, and they believe that will get them the victory.
Yep.
It really is amazing, the lawfare that is that's going on. The other point I wanted to bring up before we get out of here, I thought this was really interesting. I read this, Julian Epstein. Julian Epstein is as Democrat as you can get. He's a Democrat. He's a former chief counsel to the Democrats of the House Judiciary Committee and a former staff director of the Democrats' House Oversight Committee. And he put on an article, Democrats' fight against hate crimes vanishes in the face of anti-Semitism, and then goes on to talk about, James Byrd Jr., Matthew Shepard, 70 convictions by the Biden administration for hate crimes. And he says, as chief counsel to the Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee years ago, I was involved in the push for stronger enforcement. It was a central part of the Democrats' civil rights agenda, but now the Democratic Party has an anti-Semitism problem on its left flank, and its tune has changed a bit. Leftist professional organizers have mobilized student groups and mobs elsewhere to attack, harass, and obstruct the free movement of Jews, all of which are hate crimes. Many openly support Hamas and the October 7th civilian massacre, calling for the destruction of Israel and for the repatriation of Jews to places like Poland. One student leader at Columbia asserted that Zionists don't deserve to live in a live-stream video. University officials took no disciplinary action until the video was widely publicized. Of course, the spike of over 8,800 anti-Semitic incidents of assault, harassment, and vandalism in 2023, a 140% increase from the previous year, was somewhat predictable. Numerous progressive groups like the Democratic Socialist of America, which counts among its supporters Democrats in Congress, and local chapters of Black Lives Matter, celebrated Hamas's genocidal attack as an act of liberation. A progressive Columbia University professor called the attack awesome. One at Cornell was exhilarated. A Stanford instructor segregated Jewish students in an apparent slander of Israelis for being imagined colonizers. Democrats have largely looked the other way and declined to name-check any of these bigotries. This Democrat, lifelong Democrat, is saying exactly what we have said. What would Democrats say if paid organizers incited mobs to attack black students, impede their movement, and publicly demand their repatriation to Africa? What would they say if college professors and their curricular slurred the heritage of Hispanics? They would rightly be outraged and would insist on maximum legal consequences against perpetrators. When asked recently about anti-Semitic violence, President Biden's reflexive response was to equate his concern with his concern for Palestinians, a pathetic both sides pander, the type of which he previously denounced in the case of Charlottesville, and one that hopelessly confuses different issues while giving cover to the angry mobs. Democrats seem to have lost the plot here. Fighting bigotry when it benefits only your favored voter groups is not fighting bigotry. It's a cynical and opportunist appropriation of a cause for narrow political gain that deprives you of any moral authority on the subject. Well, Julian, welcome to what we have accused the Democrats of being for 40 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Racist because of identity politics.
Right.
He says it right there, fighting bigotry when it benefits only your favored voter groups.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
Yep.
They judge people by groups and not individuals. That's why we said Democrats understand. Every Democrat listening right now, Julian Epstein understands it. He just didn't say it with identity politics. The Democrats have institutionalized, you want systemic racism? As we said in the summer of 2020, you guys don't believe in systemic racism, that it exists? Absolutely we do. And the heart of it is inside the Democratic Party in the United States.
Yep.
That's where it is.
Yep. And it has been for a long, long time. We watched it get to this point. Identity politics is everything for them. And they are nothing without it. Imagine if they couldn't do that. Imagine you're going to get into a situation. It's like, okay, you can't bring up somebody's identity. Ready? Go. They'd be lost.
What?
They'd have nothing.
They don't have victims and oppressors.
Right.
Because you have to separate by groups.
Yep. They would have nothing.
It's too hard to say, oh, that individual is an oppressor against that individual.
Right.
Doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
It's got to be groups.
And why is it that they can't, every time they're in front of Congress and they're testifying, why is it that they can't proudly declare what they believe? Because they know politically they'd be defeated.
Yeah.
They can't admit it.
Yeah.
Why is that? You can be a champion for something and not talk about it.
Well, because they understand that their racism is not popular in America.
They know they lose. They only win in friendly territory. MSNBC, the mainstream media, all day. But sitting across from the opposition party on Capitol Hill, they can't talk about it because they know they'll be found out. They know America does not stand with them.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, Nikki Haley says she's going to vote for President Trump. She was putting out a tweet every 10 seconds almost yesterday. It was just going through everything that she said Biden has done wrong. You really now, though, have for the presidential election going into the summer, you have a unified Republican Party.
By the way, that's really good news on many fronts. I don't know where the big awakening was, but it's okay. I don't need to know that. It's that it's happening, not why it's happening. Ultimately, they clearly see it now. The key members of the GOP see that you're going to have to win the election, and I hope that vision goes beyond the election, because if you win, you also have to be able to carry out your agenda. We have to look at the very real possibility, we'll see if it happens, that Trump wins, that he's given a mandate by the American people. If the lead is that big, and we'll see if that happens, then they're going to want that agenda done. They're going to want things to be, the American people, to be fixed, and that's going to require cooperation within the GOP to get those things done. And it's still going to be an uphill battle because, the most they may get in the Senate is maybe 52, 53, possibly 54 seats. But they're going to need to stay together as a party if they want to get anything done.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.